I'll be the first to admit that I'm one of the most skeptical people I know. I don't believe in ghosts or any other paranormal stuff. I'm quick to dismiss stories that seem fake, or at the very least fabricated. That's why I'm completely at a loss for words at what happened to me just weeks ago. I wanted to write all of this while it was fresh in my mind. I can't explain what happened to me, and to be honest, I'm still terrified. I thought to myself, maybe if I write what happened to me and share it with the internet, maybe someone out there can explain what happened. Well, hopefully somebody out there can explain. My friend Steve and his wife were going out of town for the weekend for their anniversary. The two of them don't travel alone a lot because they have 2 children and a dog. I know for some people that's a first world problem, and you're correct, but Steve isn't struggling financially. He built this massive home in the middle of nowhere because he likes privacy, and if you're fortunate enough to do that, I can't blame you. Well, for Steve and his wife, the stars were about to align perfectly. The 2 kids were going out of town for some type of school trip, so they were going to be alone with just the dog. When Steve told me all of this, I insisted on going over and watching the dog for the weekend so he and his wife could go on a romantic weekend getaway. He agreed, and the plan was set in stone. I would be watching his beautiful golden retriever for the weekend. I made my way to the house on Friday afternoon. I didn't work weekends, so I planned on just staying there Friday through Sunday. Steve stocked the house full of food and snacks for me and made sure I had everything I needed. It was a bit overkill for a weekend pet sitting job, but I wasn't complaining. I love dogs, and I love quiet weekends, so win-win for me. Now for the scary part. On Friday night, the dog and I just hung out and watched movies. Steve sent me a text around 9 p.m. and said, "Don't get scared being all alone in that house. It can get pretty spooky at night when you're by yourself." I gave him a single LOL text back and told him to shut up. As I said before, I'm a very skeptical person. I don't get scared of empty houses or being alone in the middle of nowhere. I'm well aware that anything can happen, so I just don't get scared easily. I slept in the spare bedroom, and Steve's dog came with me. We went to bed around 1 a.m. At 3:21 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of the dog barking downstairs. It was that loud and vicious barking. I won't lie, that actually did scare me. But more of the surprise scare, not that scared out of my skin kind of scare. I made my way downstairs, and the entire time, the dog never stopped barking. I finally found the dog in the kitchen barking at the door that led to the basement. All the hair on his back was standing straight up, and the dog looked incredibly spooked by something. I was calling his name and trying to calm him down, but he just wouldn't stop barking. I grabbed the doorknob, and this sent the dog into a spiral. He was now running back and forth barking and just going insane. Of course, my first thought was maybe some kind of intruder in the basement. Possible, but unlikely. Steve has all that super fancy security equipment, so breaking in is not something that's easy. I grabbed a big knife from the kitchen and opened the door. The dog ran to the doorway but didn't go down into the basement. He just stood at the frame and growled, his hair still sticking straight up. I turned the light on and descended the stairs. I started yelling a bunch of stuff, pretending to be a lot tougher than I am, but I heard or saw nothing down there. I tried calling the dog down into the basement, but he wasn't moving. I even went as far as to look all around the basement to give my mind some peace. It's a finished basement, so I looked in closets in every corner, behind furniture, and even in the bathroom that's down there. No intruder and no evil ghosts. The only thing I did notice was how unreasonably cold it was down there. I know it's a basement, but I've been down there a million times, and it's not that cold. Even in the dead of winter, it's never that cold. At the end of the day, a cold basement is no reason to freak out and run away. I spent the rest of the night in the living room. It took a while, but the dog finally calmed down, and we both fell asleep again. The next day, the dog was completely fine. We played outside for a while, and I just spent most of the day listening to music and watching movies. I went down in the basement at one point during the day, and the temperature was completely normal. It felt like the rest of the house. I didn't really spend much time giving it thought, and just went about the rest of the day. That night, I decided to stay on the couch, just in case the dog had another basement door incident. I wanted to stay up later, but I ended up falling asleep while watching a movie. Once again, at almost the exact same time, I woke up to the dog throwing a fit and barking like the house was on fire or something. I stormed into the kitchen, and again I tried getting the dog to stop barking, but he wouldn't listen for the second night in a row. But this night was different. I didn't think it was possible, but the dog was even more erratic that night than he was on the previous night. I knew nothing was down there, so I told him repeatedly that it was okay. It was like I wasn't even there. When I grabbed the doorknob this time, instead of continuing to bark, he started to cry and whimper. It was the strangest thing. I let go of the knob, and when I tried to console the dog, he started barking again. I was annoyed and confused. One last time, I grabbed the knob and went downstairs. Again, the dog started to cry and still wouldn't follow me into the basement. This time was different. It was still cold down there, just like the previous night, but this time it stunk so badly. I don't know how to describe the smell other than just bad, but perhaps the weirdest thing was that some of the pictures he had on the wall of his family were knocked over, and the bar stools down there were also knocked to the ground. Other than that, nothing else was misplaced or destroyed. I picked up the bar stools and also the pictures and just set them on the bar. The smell was so overbearing that I didn't even want to be down there anymore. I went back upstairs, and for the first 30 minutes or so, the dog continued to bark, and I tried to figure out what could be the reason for the smell. When the dog finally calmed down, I gave him a treat and we both fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, I went into the basement to try to get to the bottom of the smell, but the smell was gone, not even a lingering odor. Also, the dog followed me down, and he was happy as can be. For 2 nights, that dog refused to come into the basement with me, but today, he went down there without a care in the world. I was completely stumped. I had no clue what had happened the previous 2 nights. Steve got home around 1 in the morning, and as you may expect, his dog was jumping for joy. His wife took the dog outside, and I started catching up with Steve for a bit. He asked how everything was, and I told him that, for the most part, everything was great. He gave me a confused look when I said for the most part, so I explained in detail what happened over the weekend. I totally expected him to laugh and assume I was playing a joke on him, but he didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just stood there. He finally looked down and told me that, occasionally, when the dog was a puppy, he would have these barking fits and just go crazy barking at that door. Apparently, he hadn't done it in years, so Steve forgot about it. They never knew the reason, but then one night, he just stopped doing it. I could tell Steve was freaked out, a lot more freaked out than I was. We talked about it for a little longer, but ultimately, I kept telling Steve not to worry, and it's probably nothing. It's been 2 weeks, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it. Steve told me that since they've been home, the dog has been completely normal and has had no basement door episodes. I've tried looking into it myself, but I haven't found anything that could logically explain what happened. Just when I think I may have found something that sort of explains what happened, once I add everything up, it doesn't make sense. So what's the deal? Can someone out there explain to me why that dog was acting this way? What was the smell, and where did it come from? I need help, people. I'm losing sleep, and I don't even live in that house. I just want some sort of answer. I don't know if this is considered your typical scary story, but it's definitely freaky and very unnerving. The more time that's gone by, the scarier it becomes for me. I'd love to share it and see what people think. It was a few years ago now. I had just broken up with my boyfriend and moved into this cute little apartment. It was an entire apartment complex. The complex itself was beautiful, quiet, and elegant. I quickly made friends with neighbors and several of the other tenants. It was just a nice and friendly little community. A few months into my lease, I thought I heard the sound of running coming from the hallway one night when I was getting ready for bed. I looked out the peephole of the door, but didn't see anything. There weren't any kids in my building, so I couldn't imagine who would be running at that hour. But strange things happened, so I didn't question. The next few nights, I heard the sound again. I didn't get up and look because it just didn't seem that important to me at the time. It's worth noting that my apartment is on the ground level, and my windows face a beautiful courtyard. The door to the apartment is still inside the building, and you need a key to get into the building. It took a little while to get used to the windows being at ground level at first, because if you wanted to, you could come right up to my bedroom window. I will say that I wasn't worried about anybody in this community doing that. I'm just stating that it was something on my mind when I first moved in. However, that information is about to become relevant, because one night, I woke up to what sounded like giggling outside my bedroom window.